Okay, let's jump right in. Today's explainer isn't just your standard philosophy breakdown. We are literally unpacking a grim, dark Gothic fable known as the Villénaire Nar. It's this wild framework built entirely on the ruins of Nietzschean thought, and it basically laughs at the death of traditional reason. So we're going to trace this incredibly cynical journey, going all the way from absolute nihilism to complete creative sovereignty.
Behold the map of your ruin, traced in the living ink of the abyss. Right? Talk about a dramatic theatrical declaration. That is our entry point, and it's the voice of our central figure, the Crimson Jester. Now you gotta understand, the Jester isn't some traditional villain. Instead, he acts as this cynical, laughing architect of a doomed drama. He is the pure embodiment of chaotic truth. He's actively tearing down these illusions of order, and basically positing his own existence as the absolute ik, the absolute I within this completely disenchanted wasteland.
So, here's our roadmap for decoding this dark metamorphosis today. We'll start with shattering the night of reason. Then we'll look at surviving the seventh solitude, move on to the monstrous synthesis, explore the symbol of the fool's rattle, and finally wrap up with the play of the child.
All right, Section 1, Shattering the Night of Reason, Unmasking the Apollonian Illusion. Let's get into it.
Right off the bat, we see the core conflict. On one side, you have the Night of Reason, totally wrapped up in the Apollonian illusion. Now, for the philosophy students tuning in, you'll immediately recognize this as the ultimate manifestation of slave morality. It's a system of really rigid, static virtues born from weakness, basically designed to keep the herd comfortable and obedient under the incredibly heavy weight of the spirit of gravity. But opposing him, we have the Crimson Jester, pure Dionysian truth, master morality, and the absolute sovereign will to power.
Which naturally leads us to a pretty terrifying question. What actually lies beneath the mask of reason? See, when the Jester performs his tragic catalyst and takes his jagged blade to pierce the heart of that old order, we enter what the sources call the parable of the mirrorless corridor. It's this profound metaphor for the totally shattered ego. Think about it. When the mirrors of societal validation and objective truth finally break, is there actually any divine foundation left standing?
Well, the Jester boldly declares there is, and I quote, "Nothing behind the mask, what spills forth is molten crimson fire." Basically, when that rigid monument of reason cracks open, the shattered ego doesn't reveal some hidden underlying truth. No way. Instead, the great star rises to completely incinerate the herd's static laws. It unleashes this raw, primal, molten fire, the chaotic nature of existence that just bursts out the second the spirit of gravity is finally slain.
Moving right along to Section 2, Surviving the Seventh Solitude, the Agony of the Void. Now, the seventh solitude is defined as this truly agonizing psychological death where an individual steps totally beyond the beautiful cages of society to become their own divine lawgiver. Within the lore, the soothsayer speaks right from the throne of this solitude, declaring that the absolute void is literally the only honest foundation for a sovereign soul. And this void, it acts as a crucial crucible. By accepting that the universe is fundamentally silent, the sovereign soul is forced to stop relying on external gods. It's the exact critical moment where passive despair transforms into active creative power, allowing you to forge entirely new meaning right out of the emptiness.
Now, what's really interesting here is that this requires a radical philological transvaluation. The Jester takes the concepts of good and evil and completely strips them of all their traditional moral weight. Instead, good becomes this vital, life-affirming flame that consumes, and bad, that becomes the stagnant ice of a piteous peace. So morality in this disenchanted wasteland is no longer about, kindness versus cruelty. It's completely redefined. It's vitality and bold action versus stagnation and cowardly passivity.
All right, Section 3, The Monstrous Synthesis, Balancing Chaos and Logic. This brings us to the parable of the cracked vessel, which details the knight's ultimate transformation. The idea is that the sovereign individual actually has to wear the cracked vessel of reason, basically the broken armor of the slain knight, as this necessary facade just to navigate reality. But harboring inside, that's the wild creative fire of chaos. Because the universe has fallen silent, sovereignty isn't some decree handed down from the heavens anymore. It becomes the gift of the blade, an authority that is claimed strictly and solely through the will to power.
And this cracked vessel is intrinsically tied to peeling back what's called the veil of Maya. Society desperately clings to these traditional masks and legal metaphors because they're trying to hide the underlying chaos of reality. But the Jester, armed with his chipped axe, just gleefully exposes the staggering empty nothingness right at the heart of all human law. So you wear the vessel, sure, but you're laughing at the illusion the whole time, never forgetting the abyssal chaos that's breathing right beneath the veil.
Section 4. Symbol of the Fool's Rattle, the Metaphysics of Play.
Okay, the Fool's Rattle. This is the central metaphysical artifact of this entire dark philosophical lore. It is quite literally the instrument of the ultimate unburdened spirit. First off, it invokes the play of the child. This means abandoning that totally fruitless heroic will that constantly tries to force order onto an entropic universe. By shaking the rattle, the sovereign individual rejects destiny and that heavy burden of the must, escaping what the Jester mocks as the treadmill of blood. It drives this ontological deconstruction, and it absolutely shatters the spirit of gravity through active cynical laughter, dissolving the moral chains of the herd into nothing but dust.
And finally, Section 5, the play of the child, juggling the stars.
And this brilliantly illustrates the complete psychological metamorphosis we've been tracking. Step 1, rejecting destiny by completely shattering those Apollonian illusions. Step 2, enduring that fierce ontological deconstruction in the seventh solitude, literally facing down the absolute void. And Step 3, invoking the play of the child. The sovereign individual, having finally mastered their Nietzschean shadow, creates their own meaning from scratch. This is the real dark alchemy of the Jester, taking passive, nihilistic despair and transforming it into the active, sovereign power of creation, literally juggling the stars within a totally self-created drama.
So, drawn directly from the Jester's cynical laughter, we're left with one final huge question. In a silent, completely indifferent cosmos, will you wear the beautiful cage, or will you shake the fool's rattle? I mean, will you cower behind the illusion of the herd, or will you actually embrace the absolute void and that radical, sovereign freedom of the Crimson Jester? The choice, and of course the chaos, is entirely yours.